at the very least, we must be growing at 4%, at the very least, because I think that's the bare minimum potential. The challenge is always, what do we do to push it higher? Closer to 5, beyond 5.
If all your cylinders were to fire at the same time, we'd be looking at Malaysia growing at 6, even 7%. Is that a possibility?
It is a possibility, but there's a but to it. I mean, I don't want to throw something without really looking at the trajectory. I think we do have some path to go through before we can sustain that kind of higher growth, But to me, at the very least, we should be aiming to grow at 5% each year. That should be a realistic.
That's conservative. Is that conservative?
Yeah. So if we don't grow at a high force towards 5, then I think we have a lot of work to do to unlock the potential. If we are able to do at 5 for the next few years, it will give us enough time to build all the other capacities for us to jump to the next level, which is 6%, hopefully.
Malaysia has been making a lot of headlines in the semiconductor space. The Prime Minister has been very busy convincing investors to invest in the country in this sector. Give us a sense of the kind of growth you're anticipating and the big picture plan for semiconductors in Malaysia.
Our biggest preoccupation now is to make sure that we localize the industry. So, you have a few levers. We have a lot of demands for data centers now. Of course, data centers go through its life cycle, and then it has to replenish its servers, its chips, its racks. And we are also very good with the back end. Our preoccupation now is building our strength throughout the value chain.
Building an ecosystem.
An ecosystem. I mean, we have an ecosystem before, but it was very much limited by the back end industry. And now with the presence of data centers, there will be a local demand for chips, especially for AI chips. And therefore, I think we want to make sure that hopefully we don't assemble chips coming from elsewhere, or the data centers here don't just import AI chips from elsewhere. We want it to be here. And we are working on it.
Higher up the value chain?
Higher up the value chain, yes.
When might this happen?
I think it's possible in the next 1 or 2 years. We begin to see, the first few batches of manufacturers or companies looking at Malaysia as a viable place to design and to manufacture everything here, because the demand from Malaysia and this region alone is also quite significant.
RON 95, petrol subsidies, a very politicized, sensitive issue for Malaysia. The Prime Minister has said that it will be rolled back in the middle of 2025. Give us a sense of the mechanism. How will that be rolled out?
What I can share is this. The whole idea is that we protect, at least 85% of the household, so that they won't have to go through any price increase. And those ineligible for the subsidy will have to pay the market price. We've more or less identified that perhaps a better way to protect lower income household is to have a 2-tiered pricing.
Minister, the people are ready, Malaysians are ready for the unwinding of subsidies, because we've been here before and we've seen how Malaysians have been up in arms whenever we talk about RON 95. So you're confident that Malaysians are ready for this to be rolled out?
I think we are prepared for the choppy waters ahead. On the one hand, I think we have spent a long time preparing the masses, and we've put forth our argument, we prepared the at least infrastructure, the database and so on. So in a way, the public has more time to digest this. Yet, something like this, obviously, I think is a once in a generation decision that affects everyone's life. So obviously, there'll be people affected, and there'll be people unhappy with it, and people have to adjust their consumption. So I do expect a lot of noise in the beginning. My hope and our responsibility in the government is to make sure that we manage this properly so that it is sustainable. The policy shift is sustainable, and our society's view about the shift from a blanket subsidy approach to a targeted subsidy approach becomes part and parcel of Malaysian fabric beyond this administration.
It's hard to talk about the economies in Southeast Asia, in ASEAN, without bringing China into the picture, because a lot of FDI from China actually flows into the region, Malaysia in particular. We're talking about a slowdown in China, a sluggish economy that's really struggling to reverse that trend. How is that impacting Malaysia, and how is that, I guess, being included in your own calculation when you take a look at Malaysia's growth?
It's, of course, you know, the strength of China's economy impacts us directly, at least in the short term. You know, our currency does take a win from what happens in China. The trade numbers, our own exports and imports also will be affected by China. But I think that's the other side of the coin. With the slowing of China's domestic market, a lot of the companies, especially consumer products, electronics, high-end ones, have to look for different markets.
The China Plus One strategy?
The China Plus One strategy. I think in the past, a lot of Chinese companies contend that the domestic market was huge enough for them to grow without ever having to think going overseas. I think there is a rethink of that. A lot of these companies understand that with a lower kind of average growth in the next decade, it is better for them to find a foothold into the next big consumer market. And that's where ASEAN and its proximity and its culture.
So you're not too concerned about China's slowdown because...
I'm not too concerned. We have to manage in the short term, and that will affect us. We understand that. But there's a plus point to that. It comes with a lot of Chinese companies looking at ASEAN as the next market, and therefore I think we will be seeing more investments coming from China.
The thing is, Chinese companies investing in Malaysia carries its own risk in the context of US-China tensions. Those companies might just get in the crosshairs of tensions with the two, and Malaysia might just be paying the price for it.
It's a risk that we constantly looked at, and I think it's something that we have to build a certain framework for us to manage